Hi, it's Gadget UK here again, back for part 2 of the Victor Wondermega. I had a few people in part 1 mention that JVC are one and the same with Victor. I think it stands for, is it Japan Victor Company or something like that? So yeah, thanks for that, the few people that mentioned that. As we left things in part 1, there were still a number of issues, and there's 2 or 3 issues that we have to deal with within this video. Thank you to Daniela for entrusting me with this. So I think I've sorted the audio issue. I'm not 100% sure what the issue is. I think it was the reflow of that little chip there. I'm not sure if it's a DAC or an op-amp. I can have a look at the part number in a minute. If I just hold the board down and hold the switch down here, start it playing on audio track, just give me a sec. Yeah, let's try following music. Yeah, there's music. It's just working. Normally you'd have to press here and it would cut in and out. I worked out from pressing the cap here, that's when it was going off and on. So I thought it's either got to be that cap or this. So I replaced the cap, replaced these 2 caps and reflowed that, and we've got audio back from the CD. Sounds perfect. So the repair is actually done now. The LED here, it was the bottom of the leg that had broken. That's all it was. So just had a bit of solder there, so that LED's working as well now. So the only thing I need to do is clean up. You can still see some white crud there. There's some white crud around some of the ICs over there. We'll reflow or replace the caps, because obviously I've still got the remainder of the cap kit, and then focus in on the S-video issue to see if we can improve the S-video. The S-video might just be how it is on this board, which is awful, but it could also be, you know, bad capacitors or damaged traces around that area of the PCB. So a quick look at the status of the board here. You can see we've placed all of the caps on the CD section here. It's still intermittently, occasionally, not playing CD audio, despite the fact I thought I'd solved that issue. Now the other thing I did do, which I thought might be the issue, is when you just press slightly here and make a ground contact, it's okay. So I cleaned the ground contact there and on the shielding, but also the other ground contacts. There might be 1 or 2 on here that still need doing. You can see it's still got the protective coating over here, you know, it's like flux or conformal coating or something. But anyway, yeah, I need to do the caps here. Look at those, they're awful. They're all like this. You can see it's like electrolyte around it still, bits of flux on at a crazy angle, awful shaped solder points. We've got 1 or 2 on the bottom side of the board here, 1 next to that white connector there. All the ones up the top there have been done. I've just done that one and replaced these 4 here. But can you see, look at the board here, can you see how dirty it is? Yeah, hopefully if that's coming out, you can see it there pretty well. All the way up here, look, it's filthy. So I need to continue cleaning around there, but anyway, I'll work my way through those last, I don't know, 6 or 7 caps, I think. And hopefully we should be good. And I guess I could share some of the clean-up work here. So I'm just using a cotton bud IPA at the moment. I initially went over this with vinegar and had a bit of a scrub, but just watch, if I just have a wipe there, look at that. You can see it's like a greeny yellow to it. Some of the solder mask is worn away around here, just very lightly, not a lot. They've been the exact same process with each one of these. It's a case of, you know, I've cleaned around initially with vinegar, I've removed the caps, added some flux, cleaned up the pads, and cleaned the whole area with IPA here. Just make sure there's nothing else that needs any additional, you know, cleaning with the vinegar. I'll clean up these components here with the fiberglass pen in a minute. And then once we've done this, I can then inspect the pads and wires and anything around there. But I'll be honest, I've not found any bad wires or anything like this on this machine. The corrosion hasn't really done very much damage, if I'm honest. And you may think this step is kind of unnecessary or pedantic, but you're just getting off the bits of corrosion that won't come off either with just IPA or vinegar. Someone asked me why I've been using vinegar more than IPA with general cleanup recently. Obviously follow up with IPA, you wouldn't leave vinegar on a board. And the reason is, because it's a mild acid, it will etch the surface ever so slightly. And you just end up with a much cleaner end result. It will remove any oxidisation. Vinegar will remove oxidisation, IPA will not. Just touching those resistors there, that's what that noise was. Equal the size of the solder points, that's one done. So the motherboard recap is complete, I'll show you in a minute. The next thing I want to do is just undo the screws holding the up plastic part on top of the drive here. In fact, there's 4 screws holding it on. I can see I'm going to drop every one of these, aren't I? I'm just paying attention to whether they're the same length, and they seem to be. It's not going to matter, I don't think. It's just going to be metal mounts on here. Yeah, that one is a post that seems to have broken there in the past. Yeah, can you see that? That's going to need gluing on there. It must have stuck onto that bit. But now we can get to the gears. I can just clean these with a bit of IPA, and we'll get a little bit of moly coat onto them. So, as I say, we'll clean the rail here. Let's see if we can just rotate this like that very carefully. Just so I can get to this end of the bar here. I mean, it's bone dry, that bar. It won't help. And as I say, we'll have a clean around these gears. Got to be careful you don't get fibres on there from the cotton buds. That's one thing to watch out for. And there's no grease on here, look, on this plastic. There is on a lot of other systems, even like the Mega CD, I think originally would have had some grease on here somewhere, I'm sure. And we can clean around the chassis as well, just to make sure there's no dust anywhere around here. It's just going to get into the mechanism, isn't it? Ah, the odd hair, look. There is, however, a little bit of grease on here, look, but that's long since gone crusty. So we'll get a tiny bit of moly coat onto here, and then we'll just see if we can distribute it. Move this up here. Some of that will need wiping off in a minute. Just get a little bit there like that. Yeah, we can clean off like the excess. We don't need quite so much there. Careful not to overwind that when it gets to the end. So yeah, I'm going to get rid of that excess there. And we'll do the usual trick of just getting a little bit of grease, just touch into that. Can you see that starting to get in there? We can clean off the excess in a minute. We just want a little bit. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's feeling nice and greased up, I think. Let's move the carriage all the way up there. We want some on this rail here. And the final thing here, we'll just cotton bud with IPA and just carefully clean the lens there. So we'll clean this with a bit of IPA as well, just carefully. You can see it's a bit dusty. So in case you're wondering, there's no code or anything on this laser here. I'll give you a look on the underside here. I've had a look around the sides of it, all different orientations. I cannot see a code anywhere. You can see the potentiometer there for adjusting the laser voltage. I assume there'd be, yeah, there's the ESD blob, can you see that? Two little pads there, so it's not focused very well. Just where my thumbnail is there, you've got two pads that would be joined with a solder blob, I think, on shipping. So you'd have to remove that to remove the ESD protection for the lens there, laser lens, not the lens, but the actual laser. So yeah, it's a bit of a mystery as to what pickup that is. The only numbers I can see, if you look at it from the side here, can you see it says 6520. It could be, I've seen this before where you see two digits like that and it's like something something 65. It might be like a Sharp or Sanyo pickup, I think. It kind of looks like that actually to me. It doesn't look like a Sony or anything. And of course it could be a replacement. That might be why there's no part number on there. It could be a clone. I'm not sure that is dirty. It's kind of like looks like it's got like a glittery plastic to it. It kind of looks like that, like a textured glittery plastic. I don't know, it's a bit strange. So the final thing to do now is just to finish replacing the caps on this. So the recap is complete. I've cleaned with cotton buds, but I've been cleaning some of the components here with fiberglass pen, just lightly. So we need to brush this down. There we go, all cleaned up. So let me show you what else I've discovered whilst testing this. If I power this on, I'll point you at the screen. I'll play an audio track, let's do that. Go to track 6. That's working. If you give it a slight knock, it skips as normal, that's right, and then it resumes. Sometimes what happens is it thinks the drive door is not closed. Yeah, see that at the top there, look, door open. And if I just press down slightly, look, it's detected the disc again. I'm going to set it open again, press it down. And I think it's reading. Yeah, there we go. If I eject the door, I can show you that better if I actually press the switch. So the door's open, I'm just pressing the switch and I'm pressing it. Did you hear it click? Look, it's not always registering. Yeah, sometimes you press it and you can hear it click, but on the screen it doesn't show that it's registered. So I tried a bit of deoxit there, it's looking a bit wet, but that didn't make a difference at all. That deoxit's been in there for ages. So I didn't film that because I thought it was going to be uneventful. The solder contacts, you could tell right from the start of this video, someone put blobby solder there. But they'd soldered in such a way onto that little trace there, and there was like a fracture on the end. I think that might be the actual issue. That might be what's been wrong with us all along. So what I need to do is scratch that via there. We've still got some of the trace here that would have originally gone to the switch, so I can solder onto that just to give the switch some strength. This is going to be stronger than trying to solder onto that via there with a switch. This here is like the ground, so it's just between that via there and ground. Technically that's where the switch contacts are. You can see the footprint here for the original switch, 3 little pads there and one here. So it must have had some really weird bespoke switch on there originally. So I'll point out some of the chips on the underneath of the board here, because this is the final time it's going to be out of the case. I will do a little bit of spot cleaning on here still, because there's just the odd bit like there where you can see like a smeary ring or you know, a bit of white discoloration. But look at this, can you see the cotton bud? It goes like that. The whole underside of this is covered in like flux. I mean, I described it as a conformal coating. I'm not so sure it is. It's like flux from wave soldering, I think. So if you started just running IPA over this and brushing it, you know what, you'd be at it for hours and hours and hours. If you put it in an ultrasonic bath, the ultrasonic bath would need changing and refilling, you know, and a few times, I would think, because it's just like really thick, sticky flux. It's very hard to get off the tops of these chips. So what are these chips? Well, you've got 7.4 series here, 7.4 series here. The small Sega chip there, it's marked with a Sega part number. I don't know what that is. I'm not even going to look them up. It's something related to the CD side of things, I think. Could be wrong. I've got a RAM up here. That's a RAM, that's a RAM, that's a RAM. I think that's a RAM as well. That's a 7881. That's the audio DAC. You know, 16-bit to digital to analog encoder there. So you're just taking the CD audio and turning it into an analog, you know, signal there. A JVC chip here, I'm not sure what, that's something to do with the CD side of things. The video encoder here is Fujitsu part of that, I think is MB something. It's the same one you see on some of the other Mega Drive units there. Now the S-video is awful on this. I did try just lifting pin 7 there, it's joined to 5 volts, and if you connect it to ground, and there's a ground down here, it puts it in PAL. The issue there is you need to change the clock, because there'll be a crystal somewhere that gets divided down. Depending on how that's divided down, depends on the frequency of the colour burst signal. So even though you could switch this into PAL, you need to alter the frequency, the main frequency. So you'd probably need to do like a normal 50-60 Hz mod to this if you were changing between regions, in order to get the division of the clocks right, to get the correct colour burst. I mean, technically, it's when you switch it into PAL, it's probably outputting PAL 60 at the moment. But the colours, I don't know, they just look awful. So I don't think there's anything wrong with this. It's just the S-video is just not very clever, and I can't find any faults. I've measured everything around here, and everything's in, you know, the connectivity is good. There are no faults on anything. There's no corrosion, and I think that's important to point out as well. All the vias, there's not a single corroded via anywhere on this. So it's not like a corroded via was the original fault, and that's not what's going on with the S-video. The board is in very, very good condition. And the only other chip on the underside here is the BTL driver here. You know, you can see it's like it's heat sunk. You know, you've got two big thick tabs there, heat sinking into the board there. So that's for controlling the spindle, you know, spinning the motor around, and probably moving the carriage forwards and backwards, you know, because you're using a fair bit of current moving a motor like that. It needs to sink that heat, which is yeah, why it's got these two tabs on it. And a quick look on the top side of the board here. So the first thing I'll point out is this little chip here. Initially I was like, oh, is that the video encoder? It's right next to the S-video. It isn't. That's actually an NEC chip. I'll perhaps stick the part number there. It's the Z80. Yeah, it's the Z80. It's a really weird place for it, but then again, not so weird in the sense it's next to the original 68,000 here. The chip over here seems to be a little MCU. I think this may be to do with the fact that this is a bit of a hybrid system of sorts, in the sense that, you know, you got the what's it called, karaoke side of things to this. So this may well be something to do with that. I don't know. I don't remember ever seeing a little MCU on any of the other Sega systems, and it's kind of like the only bespoke part to this that's different, really. Same Sega ASIC there that I showed on that Nomad, so that's one of the main ones you get on a Model 2 Sega Mega Drive or Nomad. The ASIC down here, I think that's the Mega CD, that's the main part of the Mega CD, and we've got some more RAM here. That one I think is possibly the ROM, or it's got a dash 12, yeah, it could be a ROM, I think that's a ROM, it's a Toshiba part. And you've got a Sanyo chip here, that's going to be to do with the CD side of things, a 315, you know, Sega chip there. Again, that's going to be for the CD side of things. RAM here, that's going to be the save RAM perhaps, although there is a RAM on the underside that's near to that. and then obviously the 68,000 12 megahertz there for the Sega CD side of things. So I think the Sega CD has sort of been squashed up this side. We've got an Oki RAM here. That's going to be the main RAM for the Mega Drive side of things, I think. I think that might be the RF amp. Yeah, I recognise that part number, CXA1372Q. You get those on the Neo Geo CD, actually, and various other systems. I think that is the RF amp, I could be wrong. And that's perhaps the DSP or something like that. That might be for servo control or something. I don't know. I think that was the faults on that Neo CD I looked at. There was a small chip just like that there, and I'm pretty sure that was the fault on that board. So the final thing I'm going to do now is swap that cap. So you can see with the door switch here from the via, I've run a little piece of caramel to the other side of the switch because the contacts are connected between there. And this is, I think, why it was unreliable in terms of the door switch, and also why CD audio was cutting out. It probably was just that switch, because I tell you, I can't find anything else. I've checked everything around here, and you can see it's super clean and tidy now. We've got that one fixed wire for the audio channel that was intermittent at the start and then cut out on me and just wouldn't work. I just had one audio channel for ages until I worked out the issue there. But you can see the caps looking really good on here. And it's the same all the way along here. This area was very dirty before, and some of these caps, they just look terrible the way they were soldered. You can see we've got, you can see those three there look great, and then there's a few down here, and there's the odd covert one look down there. And a quick look at the mixer board now. So you can see I've swapped every single cap on there. Didn't need any fixed wires or anything like that. It's looking pretty clean. The main thing is there's no furriness around here. It all looks good as new, and everything obviously works. I avoided melting anything here. There's a mark there on the side of that from when whoever replaced that cap before. Can you see that? It's not something I did because I used Captain tape everywhere. But yeah, in general, I'm very pleased with how this has turned out. That wire's just broke off there, so I'll have to resolder that again. So I'll swap out that through hole there, just a bit of fresh solder. Yeah, look, the solder did not shift at all. Oh, it's come off there now. Some of it's come off there. To be honest, with things like this, it's far easier just to heat it as soon as you feel it go molten, just pull it through, and then the holes unblock really easy. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so the positive is marked there, that side. That leg's super short, can you see that? That's why it was on the board at a crazy angle. So the other crazy aspect to this, look at these caps here. They're identical, and I noticed that the makes of some of the other caps that I've put on there are identical. I think it's the same cap kit. I actually think I put a cap kit on there. This perhaps wasn't recapped that long ago. This is the problem though, no one's marked it up inside to say when it was recapped. I'll stick a label on the PCB, just a small one in a minute, so it's clear when it was done. Had they done that, I might have just been able to actually just reflow things and to just try and diagnose and follow the faults. But yeah, that's something useful to do. Always mark something up to say when you recapped it, especially something like this where SMD caps are involved, and it's an absolute nightmare because there's millions of them. Mark it up, mark it up. I'm going to snip down the legs on the backup cap there. They are really long. Don't short them obviously, otherwise you'll lose the backup RAM settings. And I did straighten out one or two of the pins here as well because they were pretty much almost touching. These are grounds, so that's alright, and they stand off those. So yeah, just be mindful that long legs on things like that could short to the shielding. Easy way to do this is to lift the ribbon, tuck it in at the back here, just keep that ribbon above there, and get the, you can't see it, the audio video connectors in the back there. lift that over there, and then the board, there you go, just sort of sits in there like that. Connect that again, make sure the housing is slid upwards, get the ribbon back in place. You've got to kind of hold this as you press these wings down on the sides there, that's it. Just make sure it's nice and straight, it is. Connect the AV connector at the back there. Yeah, I'm not really sure what this connector at the back is for here. Originally I thought maybe RGB, but only 4 wires, so yeah, it can't be RGB. So as I say, that wire there broke off again, so I removed the bits of solder and wire from there. I've tinned up the end again. Let's just trim the end down a tiny little bit there. Get a little bit of fresh solder containing flux there, and then just carefully solder that into position. There we go. And then this board here, I'm not sure if I showed this, you've got to kind of put it under here. These are supposed to come off, but somebody's glued those on or something in the past, I'm sure. They won't come off at all. I don't want to break them. And then sort of turn it like that, and then you should be able to just push it down, that's it. And then just make sure that this is tucked right down like that. So these pots here are used to obviously adjust the various things related to the CD, you know, the tracking and focus, gain, and all that sort of stuff. And you've got a connector here to test the various signals there. So one of these is going to contain the RF signal. On the Console 5 wiki, I think there's some information, but the service manual for the JVC unit is available. So you could use that to get the right RF level set there anyway, you know, the voltage level on the laser. It's not like it's a system where there's no service manual. There is one. Just carefully get the lid on. So this screw here is absolutely essential. Originally the one on this side was missing, but I've put one in there, not put one here. The reason being is we've got a screw there, so the front is kind of held already. That one's kind of redundant, although it'd be nice if we you know, had a screw to put in there. I can't find one in my collection of screws here that will fit. It says there is Master's voice. That's the HMV logo. I don't know how they got away with that. Did the HMV copy Victor? Just testing with the wireless controller here. You'll see if I press a direction, see that LED flashing there? So it's receiving the signals. I did have to power the thing off and on before we'd actually recognise it. I don't know why. And obviously you've got to point it right down here, so yeah, it's not ideal, but it works okay and there's no noticeable latency. Well, none that I can notice. So super over bright, but I'll just give this a quick go with this controller. I'll test some of the games out and stuff in a minute when it's not quite as sunny, because you can't see what I'm doing. Yeah, as you can see, I've got full control here, and it's very responsive. As soon as you tap it, it moves. Of course, the annoying thing is, you know, if I just drift a bit, I'm pointing upwards now, see? It doesn't work. You've got to have it pointed at the console, which is, yeah, I think it makes wireless controllers like this, these infrared-based ones, difficult to use. Just when I thought I'd finished, I hadn't. There's no PSG with this. I only noticed it from playing Streets of Rage, and I thought, it doesn't quite sound how I remember it. And I went off into an emulator to compare and switch off the PSG in an emulator. And I'll show you, if I just get my EverDrive in here, and you'll hear there is no PSG. It should have doo-doo-doo-doo. Yeah, there should be like a woo sort of noise in the background. It's not there. Yeah, the PSG channel's missing. Because, as I say, I compared to an emulator, let me mute that, compared to an emulator and disabled the PSG in the emulator, and that's exactly how it sounds, how this sounds. Now the PSG comes out on pin 178 here. The dilemma I've got is it's a pad that doesn't go anywhere. It must go underneath the IC. So it's going to be a nightmare trying to follow this one. I'm going to have to try and measure from the pin on this side to the other side to the wires and see if I can work out where it's coming out on the wire to then try and follow it to see where it's going. It really does defy belief, this, actually. It's annoying as hell, this Mega Drive. Right, crisis averted, I think. I thought I was going to need to swap this. You might just be able to see I did reflow that side there. It needs cleaning up a little bit further. You see that? You can see it looks a little bit fluxy. That's the side where the PSG pin is. There's nothing coming out of it. I scoped it, nothing. Initially, actually, I followed it all the way down here and then thought, hang on a minute, let's just see what's coming out of it. And that was the point where I realised there's nothing. If you load Streets of Rage, the point where you should be able to hear PSG, there was nothing. So alarm bells were ringing us thinking, oh no, it's this chip. This chip must have died. And I went off on Twitter and posted various messages about it. And let this person know, I forget, I'm useless at names, that there was this issue, that we might need to replace this. And I'll be honest, I don't want to. It's like trying to replace one of these, painful, absolutely painful, because the pitch is so fine. Trying to remove it is the big issue. If you can get one where all the pins are nice and straight after having removed it from a donor board, putting it back on is easy, but removing the one from here, not doing any damage, I wouldn't be looking forward to that at all. But in the meantime, I thought, well, let's just look at the pinouts of this and just see if there's any other signal around here, another input or output or something that may be influencing just the PSG. And I checked various things, couldn't find anything, measured some, I think there's some supply voltages down here on pin 38 or something, and 37, I forget where they are. And then the final thing I saw on the pinout was another supply for the PSG, separate power rail, VDD for it, and it's this cap here. And I measured the voltage across this cap, 0 volts. So I thought, okay, well maybe it's that, because that's where the rails go. Can you see the thick traces that come from here? Look, there's two. One goes to one side of it, the other goes to the other. This side is definitely ground, and that's joined up here. This side is definitely joined up to the trace, but there's no voltage here. So I took it out the shell here, powered it up on the map, just measured the voltage, and let me just see where it is now. It's here. Measured this point here, can you see there? And there's 5 volts. So I'm like, oh, okay, well that's the wire. So there's 5 volts on that side, 0 here. So I've just scratched the surface of the wire a little bit. I'm going to push a piece of kynar through and solder it on this side, flip it over. I'll scratch this first, solder it on here, and then just snip off the bits of kynar there just to plug that wire. Hopefully that should solve it. Now if we're really super lucky, the PSG has its voltage, supply rail from there. It might be influencing the S video, because there's a relationship, as far as I can see, between the two parts of the system there. So anyway, we'll see what happens. The main thing is I hope the PSG comes back. So the corrosion on that wire was like right inside it, and I've had to drill with a very fine bit here to get right through. Couldn't even poke a piece of kynar through. The clue, I don't know if you can see, it's a little bit dull here. So yeah, it's that cap. What's happened is that cap has leaked and it's gone into the wire there. So I'm sure I've probably shared this technique before, I might have shown it. So you can see I've got an extended piece of the kynar here. Now there's a reason for this, and we're going to leave it like that until we're absolutely completely done. So we solder to the wire there like that. That's this side done. Yeah, we'll leave that there. That's the important bit. And you may wonder why. What we can do now is trim this side off, because we don't need all of that wire. So again, you can see we've got a piece of wire. I'm just going to pull the covering off that very carefully. Hang on, if I can grab it. Can't even see it. Yeah, pull the sleeving off, look. And then same thing. I'm going to bend it down. And then we can solder that. The bending and leaving the bit on there is tactical, because what happens is when you heat a piece of kynar like this, the other side will just come straight out. It would come straight out. Now it can't because it's bent. So if we just heat the wire here and solder a nice bit of solder there, like that. And what we're left with now? Well, we're left with 2 little strands, aren't we? One on one side, one on the other. So we can just trim them off. And our wire is really nicely blocked with a piece of wire. So that's one side. And just a bit on this side now. So if we just snip that off close to the wire as possible, get rid of that so it doesn't short anything out, and let's go test it. Oh yes, it's back. That high-pitched sound, that is the PSG. Fantastic. And if we carefully measure the voltage across this cap, we should see something positive now instead of 0 volts. Look, 5 volts. Sweet. So yeah, that's another tip. don't be afraid of putting your meter on voltage mode and measure across these caps. On an audio cap, for example, some of these here that are coupling a signal, you'll get about 2.5 volts roughly. But that just gives you a clue that the signal is there rather than missing. If you have a 0 volt across it, shows you there's nothing there. It's either coupling nothing that's got a DC offset, or if it's across the supply, your supply rail or your ground is missing. So that actually I think is one of the first things I would do when you've recapped this and it's not working. Go around and measure the voltages across each cap, just because that could save you so much time. So I still need to just do a quick final clean-up and inspection, just make sure there's no hairs landed anywhere, not got any fibres from cotton buds, things like that, and there's not any little bits of flux or anything that I've missed. The good news is the video is absolutely crystal clear after fixing the issue with the PSG here. So yeah, it's interesting that missing supply rail there wasn't just affecting the PSG, it was messing up the S video as well. That was the whole issue. So I'm having to hold the camera up here, it's so overbright here today, it's so hot. Can you see how crystal clear that is? Let me just cycle the power and have a look how clear that is. Look how clear the white text is there, it's crystal clear. It's not got that rainbow banding. I don't know whether I captured it. If not, I'll cut in a clip here now from my mobile phone so you can see the difference between the two. So yeah, you can see we've got like jail bars going on, very much like you get with RGB on these, unless you do like an RGB bypass mod, but it's fantastic looking now. But I'm really glad that I persevered with this and didn't just give up. The S video, I spent quite a while looking at it, theorising, looking at the schematics from the US model, trying to work out what the issue was, and I traced the connections from there all the way back to the video encoder. As I say, I tried switching it between PAL and NTSC. I still wasn't convinced there was not a fault, but it's difficult when you get things like that. You're like, is there a fault? Isn't there a fault? Everything looks okay. Had there been a proper service manual for this revision board, I would have been able to start measuring voltages and things, but yeah, the one that is out there, yeah, it's got the same chipset and stuff in general, but there are differences. This board is laid out completely differently. The service manual that I do have for the JVC XI, there's like 3 different PCBs. There's like a split in the middle. You've got the logic on one side, the CD stuff on the other, and then the mixing thing as well. So it's split 3 ways, and there are some subtle differences, like they're different encoder. They use the Sony encoder CXA chip on the JVC model, whereas this has got that Fujitsu MB whatever it is. That rubber ring there just pulls out of the top half. Can you see? It is rubber. So you can then test it like this. I'm going to measure the RF level. I wasn't going to do, but actually, in order to test this further and just to make 100% sure that discs are working, I had to adjust the laser pot just temporarily, only a little bit, to get it to read pressed media. Now, I've spoken to the owner of this and said, do you want to use it with only original, or do you want to use burnt media as well? Did I say pressed media? I meant burnt media. And she's come back and said, actually, I'd like to just use it with original media. I won't be feeding it any of these junk CDRs. So I'll be putting it back, but also seeing what the level is and seeing whether it needs to be left a little bit higher or a little bit lower than it originally was. The reason being is, well, firstly, the way it was set, it wouldn't read CDR media at all. So if you had even a CDR audio disc, it won't read it. I don't know whether we've increased the laser level or decreased it. In theory, we've probably increased it in order to read CDR media. But I have seen 1 or 2 examples in other systems where sometimes you have to reduce it a tiny little bit in order to read CDR media, which is the opposite you would expect. Typically, that's usually with the DVD type media. The GameCube was a good example, I think, where I had to reduce it a little bit in order to get it to read burnt discs. But anyway, we'll be setting it back pretty much exactly where it originally was, I think, unless it was too high, and then I'll just pull it down a tiny little bit. So in order to do this, I am booting from the EverDrive here, because you can then load a different BIOS. I'm going to load a region 3 BIOS. So in that folder I've got a number of different BIOSes, so I'll load the US CD, Sega CD, version 2, region 3.bin, select and start. So you can see that is the Mark II BIOS. And that just allows me to use a different region disk. It's important to note that when you're burning a disk like this, you can actually change the region. There's some byte somewhere that you can, there's utilities available that allow you to change the value of those bytes to tweak it to a different region. Right now it's struggling to read that disc actually, and this is because the laser is not really very well calibrated to CDR media. So the other thing I've just done here is temporarily crop clip from the switch contact to a ground. The reason being is I want to trick it into closing the door there, so anyway, that should work. Yeah, so you can hear we've got CD audio, so that's what I'm going to use for the purpose of testing this. So the scope is looking very dusty and dirty. You can see there's lots of hair and all sorts on that. It's the way it's been stored. So we want to be on AC coupling. Let's just measure the test signal here. I can't even see it. Yeah, there we go. So what I'm aiming for there is, hang on. The other thing we need to do is set the probe here to times 10 impedance, because otherwise we will mess up with the read. So you can see there, one block at the moment in amplitude is showing 0.2 volts, and as I say, we need to be on AC coupling. So I probed up and down there. The first pin actually I thought was the RF, and as you'll see, so that started playing an audio track, and you see we've got 3 blocks. So we got 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, so that's 0.6 of a volt, 600 millivolts there, and that's with a CDR, burnt disc. So we'll do the same thing with a press disc. It's going to be much higher, probably around just under a volt, I would think. It makes me think that the laser level must have been very, very, very low as things stood, actually. So testing with an original disc now, and again I am scoping pin 1. Yeah, that's much higher, so 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, 1 volt, just a little bit above 1 volt perhaps, around the 1 volt mark. That's probably not far off where it should be. I will have a look at the JVC XI service manual just to see what level they're recommending. It might be nearer to 0.8. But anyway, we'll be reducing it back to approximately where it was. I'll increase it a little bit, because you know what, the reads were not quite as good as they could have been the way this came to me. It could be an indication that at some point the laser may die. Well, all lasers are going to die, but what I'm trying to get at, it could just be that it was set at manufacture and then used for 20 years, and it's a little bit on the low side. It just needs perhaps tweaking up a little bit, and that could ultimately mean that the laser may need replacing in the next year or two. You never know. So I'm following the service manual here, and I'm adjusting the FE. Is that the focus error? I think it is. That's the second pin down. So when you see me scoping the signal in a minute, I'm scoping that one there, and we're adjusting VR 508. I've written this down before I start. I measured the resistance. There's 3 contacts, and I've measured the resistance on one side there, just written it down and made a note, just in case I need to change it back. So I've adjusted the signal there so that it's on the bottom of the line on the scope, it's on the sensor line there, and we're aiming for 0.1 of a volt. It's not far off now. If I just tweak that a little bit, just give me a sec. I'll show you how I'm doing this. I'm using a plastic tool here, and it's really difficult, this pot, because it's right underneath the edge of the CD. So that's around 100 millivolts. And I'm just using this. You can get these plastic adjustment tools here. You want to use a plastic one because, as you can see, the little metal potentiometers there, the last thing you want to do is short the contacts out while you're actually doing the adjustment. Yeah, this particular disc is struggling with a little bit actually. It's probably going to be RF level, because remember, it's only around 600 millivolts at the moment. That's the issue here. See if Sonic CD's any better. There we go, pick that up straight away. It's, as I've said before, the burn speed and stuff makes a difference when you're burning discs. People think it doesn't, but it does. There you go. You can see that's worked alright. Sound sounded a little bit strange there. Sweet. And on this burnt disc here, we're up to around 800 millivolts actually. Now that could have been because the adjustments I did, but I barely adjusted anything really. Just that first thing that I showed you, me adjusting I think. And off the disc that wasn't working there, this is one I couldn't boot. You can see it's a bit lower, 2, 4, 6. It's kind of like 700, it's like 100 millivolts lower. And that's slightly different. It's the same manufacturer, but I think it was burnt at a different speed. Anyway, I haven't done all that tinkering and testing. I've tested a lot of my discs here and everything's working. No problems at all. I've set it back to its original voltage level here, and if we check the RF level here now, you can see we got, let's move it down a little bit, 200, 400, 600, about 700. So it was a little bit low, I think. I think that is a bit low. I can't see anything in the service manual that says exactly where that should be. So I am going to bump it up just a tiny little bit because it may struggle with certain discs at that level. Yeah, I must be going blind. In the service manual it clearly says here, it says check RF level is over 0.7 volt peak to peak and under 1.2 volts. The pickup should be exchanged with a new one for run out of its life. In other words, it's on its way out. If value is 0.7 volt peak to peak below. Well, it was bang on 0.7, maybe even a slightly less, so it shows that maybe the laser is a little bit worn on this, so I'm going to increase that to about 0.8 of a volt, I think. Should be good for a while, I would think. So I've adjusted it there. Let's see what it's at now. And you may be thinking, why not just stick it up to 1.2 volts? Because that's what they say you can go up to, and then burnt discs will work perfectly. And the answer is, well, it's an old laser. If you just increased it straight to 1.2 volts, or even 1 volt, and just left it at that, it might only last 6 months or 12 months. Whereas if you just tweak it just a tiny little bit, 100 millivolts up to 800, maybe it'll last a few years or more. The other thing is it could have always been on 700 millivolts. It might not be that it's deteriorated, but just tweaking it slightly will make its life a little bit easier when it comes to certain discs. But at the level this is at now, it's not going to read burnt discs, that's for sure. Which was why I asked the original question to Daniela there, did she want to use burnt discs for that? So playing an audio track here and looking at pin 1 again. Let's just shift it up a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm happy with that. That's 800 millivolts. So we're not quite on the the replace it level. We're a bit higher. So the only thing I can say is just use it really. See how you get on with it. If in a few years it needs a new laser, we can always try and replace it and find one. But I'll be honest, I'd rather leave this original laser in there than rush off and try and replace it now. So as well as using these trim tools here, when you're measuring signals like this, I have things like this around. I was able to stick these onto those test pins there and then clip my scope probes, the ground and the probe onto those. Bear in mind the length of cables like this can affect a signal. And the same thing, things like this, grot clips. I was using this there to short the switch out very carefully. So the chip here is a PCM audio chip. It outputs 8 channels, I think. This was bespoke to the Mega CD. This Hitachi chip here is an MCU. It's going to be for controlling the CD stuff here. So I stuck a label on here just to show it was repaired and recapped in August 2020. So should anyone ever go inside this again, if it is ever sold on, at least they know when the caps were replaced. What I wouldn't want is if Daniela sold this in a year or two, someone to just go, it'll probably need recapping and recap it again. Because it doesn't need recapping again. It'll probably be good for decades now, I would think. So I'll give it a quick wipe here. Rosa is in the way. Come out of the way, Rosa. Yeah, she's hung around this a fair bit. I think she likes it. I think she likes it because she's black and it's black. So a little bit of soapy water there. I wouldn't use anything else. You don't want to, use IPA or anything on the surface of this, really, unless there's just a sticker or something you want to remove on one part of it. But yeah, just some washing up liquid mixed with 95% water here. You can see all these sticky fingerprints here, or greasy fingerprints from me handling it mostly, have come off. The way it works on this is took the lid off very carefully and then put the lid out of the way in some bubble wrap in a box, just so that the cats wouldn't get to it. I wouldn't accidentally knock the camcorder onto it or stand on it or drop something out on it or whatever. Do you see what I mean? It's one of those. It's worth protecting it. Clean the inside around the tray there as well, so let's just switch it on, give it a try. The key, can you see, it gives up really quick look of the disc because it's already found it. When it first arrived to me, that was not happening. It was taking quite a while to find the disc, and on occasion wouldn't find it at all. Look at that, straight away. And you know whether it's detected it because this is what comes up. It'll come up here, you know, if there's a game disc, you'll see game and the music, if there's music tracks. And that happens, I'll show you again, that happens super quick after power on, which shows it's having no problems looking for and finding the disc. Now the S-video is looking really tidy. I can show you what it looked like before, and I can show you that by just connecting the composite cable at the same time. Yeah, you can see an example of how it looked visually before the fix here. You've got like little jagged edges on the letters and things there. Look at the text up there, that's how it was originally. Now you get this when you use the composite signal at the same time as the S-video on my TV. The composite on its own is okay, as I'll show you in a minute, but if I remove the composite, just watch, and power cycle it again. I don't know why I have to power cycle it. Look at the difference there. Look how crystal clear the white text is here. And look at the edges of the W. It's fantastically clear, absolutely amazing. Now if I switch back to composite on its own, so that's composite on its own, and you can see it's not too bad there, but there is a sort of some colorized stuff going on with whites. You know, composite is not as good as S-video for sure, but it's really weird how my TV, if I connect the S-video and the composite cable, I'm not sure what it's doing. It might be taking a colour signal from the composite, because can you see that? It goes awful again. It's really mysterious. And then if I disconnect the composite and power cycle it again, there we go, crystal clear. So as I said earlier on, the Sonic and Tails works every time, no problems, but this Sonic cart is just given a black screen. We'll clean them both anyway. They have had a clean, these, but yeah, can you see that? Some of it is going to be the actual slot on the Wondermega itself, you know, as you've inserted and removed carts a few times, leave it a little bit moist when you do that, insert, remove, whilst they're a little bit moist, and then perhaps have another go. And then dry it. Hopefully that should work. Yeah, there we go. So it's been fantastic working on this week. As the week has gone on, it's kind of grown on me. I think when I first started looking at it, there were some things I didn't like the fact there's no RGB out. You know, you've got S-video. That connector on the back there that I think at the start said maybe RGB out, you know, an AV out, it isn't. It's just for connection up to a modulator, and it's got like a really weird mini DIN type thing, but the spheric, you know, it's like a U shape or a circle, the way the pins are laid out, and there's only like 4 connections go to it, so you couldn't use that for passing RGB signals. What you could do is fit a 9-pin mini DIN on the back there in place of it, and do an RGB mod. Now, yeah, I think it'd be a bit sacrilege to modify this collectible system. These will set you back between £350 probably and £500. You might get them nearer to the £300–350 mark. But the Mark 1 that's got a motorised ejection tray there, and it's got some really nice fancy LEDs and things like this whole segment here is this whole section here is like illuminated with nice little panels of coloured LEDs, and it just looks amazing. And it's like, say, it's motorised. You press a button on the remote and the drawer, you know, goes, and it comes up, opens, and it closes the same way. So that one's even more desirable. Those will set you back about £700–800–900 probably. Yeah, so anyway, it's grown on me as the week has gone on. The S-video output is really good. It does still suffer from the standard jail bar issue that you get on Mega Drives. Again, you could do modifications to get around that. But if you were going to do that, you want to do an RGB mod at the same time. But it's not something I would feel comfortable doing on this, actually. I think I'd just keep it as it is now, because it's in pristine condition and it's behaving itself. So I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you can support the channel, please see the Patreon links down below. We've lost lots of support because of COVID. You know, everyone's in a difficult situation at the moment. Lots of people losing jobs and stuff. But it's dropped so much. I'm starting to get a bit concerned about the longevity of this, you know, or continuation of this channel into the distant future, certainly. if it keeps dropping, there will come a point where I won't be able to do videos. I won't be able to afford to do them, to be honest. I'll have to try and find other things to do with my time. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.